pathetic, Richards. All your so-called genius. You pound against your prison walls like a child.
Doom?
Doom switching bodies. It's a staple and always amusing. The first time Doom switched bodies with his arch nemesis Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four, was a memorable experience. One that has found itself adapted, but in such a masterful way that it's not even noted that it was an adaptation. Or that may be because it's adapted in the series that many people just ignore. It's time to talk Marvel's first family and the glorious melodrama that is always Doom. Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from music comics new and old to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. The Fantastic Four, the comic that creates Marvel Comics, the family that kicks off the era of the Marvel Renaissance, a family with some of the most amazing off-the-rails plots you will ever have the pleasure of witnessing. Issue 10, written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, with Kirby on art, Dick Ayers on inks, Stan Goldberg on colors, and Artie Simek on letters. This issue sees the return of Dr. Doom, who had seemingly died in space in an earlier issue, as if the vacuum of space could ever be a match for Doom. The cover even says to hold your breath. Clearly that's how Doom survived. No, it's not. That's not how he survived at all. Aliens. The cover tells you right away that Reed will be a villain. Not that you needed the confirmation. Look at how villainous Kirby makes his eyebrows. Also, we're promised a gorgeous pinup of the Invisible Girl, so I'm expecting the best looking blank page that I've ever seen. Also in the story, you see Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, sort of. They're characters in the Fantastic Four universe. Comic creators who are hired to pen the Fantastic Four comics which exist in universe. Reed even goes over the scripts and gives approval. So did he greenlight all those Sue is thirsty for Namor plotlines? I have questions. Their appearances are interesting. It's meta and they break the fourth wall a bit. It's an interesting look into the process of how some of the stories come about, and sometimes they will use this method to address audience concerns as well, because there's also a fan column that exists inside the comic universe and sometimes they'll answer it. Miles will vary in how endearing one finds it versus self-indulgent versus cool versus something else entirely. Issue 10 of the Fantastic Four is an issue of much padding before we get to the Doom body swap. I want the meat, and Reed having eyebrows of Doom. This issue starts off with Reed trying to invent a camera that can take pictures of Sue while she's invisible, for reasons. He just needs to see her at all times. But the Fantastic Four signal goes off. Since only Ben isn't there, they figure it must be him and that they must go to him. But for some reason, the door to the Fantastic Car, or rather where the Fantastic Car is housed, is jammed. So Johnny reacts the only way he knows how, by trying to burn it all down, which is a no from Reed and a "you're irresponsible, Johnny" lecture for him. Reed tries to stretch his way to the Fantastic Car so they can get out the window, but he can't stretch that far. So they just don't take the car. The drama. They walk instead. Although when they walk, you see why they didn't want to, because both Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Girl are accosted by fans. Isn't he handsome? Come here, you adorable thing. I want a piece of his uniform for a memento. I didn't know it was reenact singing in the rain day in New York. Sue's encounter is even skeezier. Or is it? You decide. Well, well, if it ain't the famous Invisible Girl. So this is what you look like. You should never be invisible, doll. How's about a smile for one of your fans? She gets invisible to get away from him, but then nearly causes a car accident because she walks out into the road and forgets that she's invisible and that the car can't see her, so turns visible and has to swerve to not hit her. They should have just let Johnny burn the door down, or called a cab. When they get to Alicia's, which is where Ben is, Alicia is Ben's girlfriend at the time, he really just wanted to show them all the cool sculptures that Alicia had made of their rogues gallery. Look at how great they look. Totally fine to use the resources like that. Sue is not impressed with the inclusion of Namor, which leads to yet another exchange in my favorite column. The "what was the 2018 series talking about when it said Sue and Namor weren't a thing" files exchange. Why did you have to include Prince Namor with those other horrible menaces? After all, the Submariner wasn't as bad as they. I'm glad you mentioned that, Sue. I've been meaning to talk to you about Submariner. I always thought we had an understanding, Sue. I thought when the time was right that you and I bet Sue totally wanted to have this conversation in front of their friends and her little brother. Also, maybe try, "I love you, Sue. I want to be with you, Sue. Don't leave me for the King of Atlantis, even though he actually pays attention to you, Sue. Resist the Speedo." Ignore his pinup from issue 11. Don't say it, Reed. Please, not now. Not yet. I'm not even sure of my own feelings. And then all of a sudden, Stan Lee is breaking the fourth wall, saying that that was as far as him and Jack got with the story. So all of that, pure filler. Is Reed supposed to sign off on that? Why would he? They look awful. Sue caused a car crash. Ben just wastes resources and causes panic by lighting up the signal when nothing's actually wrong. Just, hey, come over and look at my girlfriend's art. Kirby and Lee have writer's block, which should be obvious from that starting filler bit. But not for long when Dr. Doom shows up and he blackmails them into helping him bother Reed by showing them his face. his true face. After seeing that, they'll help with his revenge, and that involves calling Reed and getting him to come down to the office to review some fake changes. What I want to know is what they talked about while they waited for Reed and his stretch suit to get there. Doom is posed like he's telling an exciting explorer tale. Doom gasses Reed when he gets there and uses mystic science to teleport both of them back to his secret lab, but not before telling the comic writers to call the rest of the four, so the three. He left a card to where he's going to be and tells them to go meet him there. One backstory later involving some benevolent aliens called the Ovoids. They were the people who saved Doom and also taught him a new technique, a handy dandy mind swap. Well, it's actually a mind transference. Doom reveals he's a master at it. In fact, he's already done it. He didn't even have to be looking at Reed to do it. That's how good he is. Bam, swapped. The first thing he does is get rid of Reed's suit. It's offending his eyes. Those pinstripes were not fit for Doom. Doom is still early Doom here, so he does something that wouldn't happen later on in his characterization. Although, time of recording may have rounded the corner and he may do it again. But he starts complimenting Reed on Reed's powers. No nice things to say to Reed. Not until after 2015, and sometimes before on special occasions. Have you forgotten the power of Mr. Fantastic's body? A power which is now possessed by Doom? I can defeat you 1,000 ways. You are putty in my hands. I hope Reed is taking notes when he gets his body back, because clearly he's not been using his abilities correctly. The rest of the team bursts in and of course assumes that everybody's in the bodies they're supposed to be in. And they don't believe Doom Reed when he's all like, I'm the real Reed. Sue even asks why would an evil genius like Doom make up such a ridiculous story? He should have just told him to look at Reed's eyebrows. Johnny and the Thing come up with some pretty horrific ways of keeping Doom captive. Sue doesn't get a suggestion. No evil torturous death traps for Sue. Reed Doom says it's alright, he's already got a plan. There's a plexiglass prison just underneath that he just happens to know about. They'll leave Doom down there until they can come back and think of something. It's fine. There's totally enough oxygen in there, except there isn't. There's only an hour's worth of air in there. They make sure to be very clear about that when he's there taunting Reed inside of his body. Time then just stops making sense, because the next part shows that there's a bunch of miniature animals running around and Ben is reading a paper about zoo animals being missing. So clearly this is a time to go to print. Reed had 1 hour's worth of air. There's no way that Doom could have kidnapped all these animals in that time. He also went out and bought a green coat because he's got to stay on brand. When they confront Reed Doom, he does say that he stole the animals, but he says it's for a good reason. Listen to the science. Brace yourself. You see, dinosaurs got so big and their brains did not catch up. But if they had stayed the same size with their brains, they would still rule the world. Just stay with it, come on, stay with it. Ergo, if he shrinks the team, their powers will shrink with them, but stay proportional to their size. So when he re-embiggens them, their powers will grow. Yes, science. Sue, he promises, will be able to control her invisibility with more accuracy. Ben transform at will, and Johnny will fly faster, further, hotter. It worked. They fell for my story like a ton of bricks. Reed Richards would have seen through it. Is Reed actually not the smartest man and just his team is very gullible? Side note, I know in Marvel it's always shifting who the smartest person is. They're gone, the fools! I'm enjoying this so much. Look at that. Pure joy. In reality, he's made a reducing ray or a shrink ray that will just keep shrinking until the subject doesn't exist anymore. Meanwhile, back at the dungeon, and I'm also going to assume earlier, Reed manages to break out by using Doom's mask to crack the glass and then using the oxygen canisters to cause an explosion shattering the prison. He needs help, so he goes to Alicia's. Cause why does everybody just go to Alicia's? Poor Alicia. But Sue is there, and she's invisible, and so she knocks him out with a vase. She also calls Alicia a trusting child. Ew. And why was she invisible? Alicia knew she was there, right? Right? She did. Sue was just telling her the good news. Invisible. You see, the thing is, the year is 1962, so being blind gives you extrasensory perception powers about people's goodness. Strange. Beneath the cold steel, I can feel a warmth of spirit, of kindness. There's an aura of goodness about him, of nobility. I mean, she still sounds like she could just be describing Doom. But when the Thing and Human Torch show up to get him, the Thing finds he can't clobber him for reasons. He too senses the goodness. So they bring him back to the Baxter building, which causes Reed Doom to try to accelerate his shrink down for better powers plan. But doubt has been sown, so Johnny creates a heat mirage that makes it look like there's dynamite in the room with them. And a fit of heroism, Doom Reed jumps upon it, but Reed Doom tries to escape using his stretch powers to kind of slink up a pipe. The shock of being found out causes Doom to relax his mental control, so him and Reed switch back. Wow, so he was focusing on that the entire time alongside everything else? That's pretty impressive. But Doom goes on that Reed never realized that inside of one of his fingers there was a transistor blast gun Reed really should have checked to see if there was weaponry on him. I mean, it is Doom. Doom then accidentally shoots the shrink ray controls and shrinks into nothing, except he'll be back. The end. Pin up time. In answer to many requests, note the details in the control panel of Sue's section of the fabulous Fantasticar. Okay, but what am I noting? What am I looking for? Also, did anybody re-enlarge those zoo animals, or are they small forever? This story is a little rough. It's oddly paced, and it's firmly padded. But it's also full of that early Marvel madness of fantastical occurrences that one will either find endearing and enduring or not. It's Marvel method on full display. Doom switching bodies would become one of his recurring traits, and each time it would get more and more interesting. These early stories are themselves interesting when tracking how the characters have evolved and what facets have stayed the same. A lot of the team's core traits are still intact, but a lot has been updated, and in some cases, not all, but some for the better. Now, the Fantastic Four are notorious for having poor adaptations to their name. However, they have one animated series, time recording, that oftentimes doesn't get the examination or due it merits. Enter Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes, a series with 26 episodes that, because of changing of networks and cancellations and more, ran from 2006 to 2010. It was produced by Moonscoop Group, a French animation company, and featured a more European art style with some anime accents. While it took inspiration from comic stories, it didn't directly adapt them as the previous animated series had in 1994. It took a more lore-based approach, but then would use some of the stories as a base, fusing elements from the story with the aforementioned established and known canon. Such was the case with the episode Doomed, which aired initially on September 9, 2006. It was the second episode that aired over on Toonami, but chronologically in the series, it was the fourth. And this show had continuity, so that actually mattered. Right away, the tightening of the plot begins. The team were returning from a mission where, surprise, surprise, Johnny was irresponsible. So Sue is looking for a way to make the team look better, but also to punish Johnny at the same time and hopefully teach him some responsibility. She feels that the way he acts hurts their image. This will be the foundation of the B-plot. Meanwhile, a small robot has been casing the building, zeroing in on Reed. Reed's in the process of both trying to find a cure for Benjamin, but being distracted by something he thought about the night before. It's a passing thought he had about the extra space between atoms and the potential existence of a microverse.
There could be entire universes in that space. A microverse, if you will.
While working, he gets bitten by a microbot, which injects him with something. Given the year, you can assume nanites. The early aughts were all about nanites, and actually it's the mid-aughts, still about the nanites then. But like issue 10, it's kept vague, mystic science away, and they've switched bodies. In this story, the switch takes place over a distance. So when Reed wakes up in Doom's body, he's already imprisoned inside of that dome-shaped prison, only this time it's made of energy instead of plexiglass. And the first thing Reed Doom does is taunt him.
You pound against your prison walls like a child.
Doom?
Your life is now mine to destroy.
No. You can't do this!
But I am. You took my face, so I will take all that you love and cherish.
Hiro Kanagawa, who voiced Reed for this series, does a really good job of changing the cadence of his voice when speaking as Reed versus Doom. It's subtle, but he infuses a colder type of arrogance into Doom and Reed's body that really sells the switch. But it also lends credence to the idea that people wouldn't necessarily notice right away, since Reed is arrogant too. Unlike in issue 10, Doom is not a fan of being inside of Reed's body, and he doesn't master his powers instantly either.
Imbecilic legs.
He is, however, a huge fan of making Reed's family hate him. Except for Sue. He shoots his shot with her.
As it happens, I have decided to cancel all my lectures for the foreseeable future.
You're canceling your lectures?
I would prefer to spend my time with you.
What?
In what is my favorite part of the episode, this is why Sue realizes that something is wrong. This can't be the real Reed, canceling lectures to spend special time with her. They have an understanding, and it's called Dinner with Namor on Wednesdays. I'm joking, she's actually gonna hang out with Alicia. The B plot interconnects well with the A. That plot is that Sue has hired a crew to get some footage of how the team operates, with Johnny leading the tour. It works, but simultaneously you wonder why she would do that if she wants the team to look good, and her problem is that he was too irresponsible. Like, she calls down to ask if he's talked about the charity work and their philanthropic work, but all he's doing is showing them his cars. But it does give Reed Doom a chance to get salty when they say that Reed is the world's smartest man.
What's it like being the smartest man in the world?
Smartest man in the world? Hardly, Storm.
Over at Doom Reed, he manages to use the mask, which has an adamantium lining, to get out of the prison. And then he has to escape Doom bots and get used to the idea that he is Doom. He also actually tries to activate the weapons inside of the armor, but Doom deactivated them. There's an interesting moment where Reed sees Doom's giant unmasked portrait he keeps in the castle, which becomes pertinent to this series as it goes on. Full Batman Dark Knight Rises, he just takes a cab back to the Baxter building. The driver just thinks he's Iron Man. He then just tries to enter the building through the lobby. I love how awkward Reed is in Doom's body. He's just like, what am I doing? How do I be? In a nice bit of characterization, the team kind of buys that Doom would do that because he's just that arrogant, except for Sue, who knows the subtle differences between the egos that Reed and Victor possess. Reed Doom knocks out Doom Reed and places him inside a soundproof containment cell so no one can hear him, but he can't resist taunting him, which the rest of the teammates overhear when they follow him, and so then they realize, like, oh wow, yeah, guess Reed's not that much of a jerk. Unlike creating a reducing ray to oblivion, here Doom is just gonna blow the place up and the surrounding blocks. He used Reed's body to deactivate all the security codes and the clearances. However, it's fight time because everybody knows, so let them fight. Sue meanwhile helps Doom Reed to his lab to try and stop the bomb. While there's a fantastic moment where, because he's in Doom's body, he can see the equation he was working on differently. It's an excellent callback to how Reed could see the error in Doom's equation, but Doom couldn't back when they were in university. They just process and see information differently, especially since Doom dips into the realms of magic. Because of this, Doom Reed is able to access the microverse. So the shrinking into nothing concept comes into play. Well, not into nothing, but into something no one can see. Because when Doom comes back eventually, it will be revealed he shrunk down to the microverse. So they use this new knowledge to shrink the bomb. He's also able to reverse the transference once he sees the device used to facilitate it. He forces Doom off using his ultimate skill, hurting Doom's feelings.
In fact, I pity him. I've seen you, Doom. I've seen your true face.
No one pities Doom!
This line is also very good because it works with whichever lore you're applying to Doom's face. Very scarred or barely. Either way, it still cuts Doom, who's incredibly vain and needs to project that failure and that loss onto Reed. It has to be Reed's fault because Doom's ego can't handle it, at least not at that point. And so all is well, and they even managed to come up with a good explanation for the documentary crew.
Okay, how about it was a training exercise?
Sure.
They so rule.
And so we end on Sue teasing Reed that she canceled all his lectures, which she of course didn't. She put them back. They have an understanding. There was also an arc during Claremont's run in the Fantastic Four wherein, after teaming up to fight the Dreaming Celestial, Reed found himself trapped inside Doom's armor and had to pretend to be Doom for a bit, and take Sue on as his consort in Doom's body. Also, look at this cover. It's like it's a Conan cover. And the engagement cover is great too. So is the teaser page. Who got that romantic engagement shot? I hope it was Peter. It's an interesting few issues, but this episode doesn't really take from that. Not in terms of the little minute details. Instead, it masterfully rearranges issue 10, taking only what is required but keeping clever nods to the original story, such as the shrinking, the use of the mask to break the prison, and of course the tricking of the team, but in an updated manner. It plays wonderfully with their characters and takes the plot and updates it in a fun, accessible way, and showcases the core of a good adaptation, which is staying true to the concept and character, but knowing which elements to shift or remove entirely. Some stories adapt much better if you do them very directly, but others require more changes. When adapting, a good creator can tell which ones will stand better if left more alone, and which ones could use some tweaks. It's a fine line to walk. This episode walks it well. So I want to hear things. Were you a fan of this Fantastic Four series? Which is your favorite Doom body swap? Is it all about Doom swapping bodies with a Daredevil? What's your favorite petty Doom Reed moment? I just wanted to tell you about this adaptation because no one talks about this show really, not that much, and I want to talk about it with people. I also want to talk about hilarious early Fantastic Four stories. Tell me some of your favorite of those too down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking this entire day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.